Hello. Packed house, I see. Bringing IP in the Metaverse. Welcome to Miami, Dcentral 2022. My name is Maury Hicks. I am the CEO of Metaverse's World. I also run Web3 consultancy, helping brands transition into Web3. I'm joined with Stan and Jeff. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves and just say a little bit about your organizations and what you do there?
All right, so I'm Stan, head of strategic partnerships for Ready Player Me. Ready Player Me, in case you haven't heard of us, is a cross-game avatar platform. We are integrated into more than 4,500 different games, apps, virtual worlds. And in a nutshell, what it allows you to do is to create an avatar in one place and then use it as your persistent identity across all other places. And then in the context of what we're going to talk about, then the avatar becomes the rails of content, because it goes everywhere. So excited for this talk.
That's right. Jeff?
Jeffrey McGannis here, one of the co-founders of Crowd Create. We are a Web3 marketing agency and advisory. We started in 2014 and then went full blockchain in 2017. So in the world of IP, we've been helping both Web2, Web3 brands figure out strategies on what they can do now in terms of getting that IP into this next wave of the future and utilizing the technology. So.
Fantastic. Both of these guys work for fantastic companies. I actually work with both of them in different capacities, so check them out. But as you know, so Web3, Metaverse, and crypto is pretty new to the masses. I often say that if we make the comparison between where we are now with Web3 and crypto, we're pretty much somewhere between 1996 and 2001 in the internet, when people are saying, it's a fad, why do we need email, etc. You can see where we are now, it's prolific. But as we see the adoption of Web3 and crypto, and banks really kind of taking it seriously, we want to kind of move towards mass adoption. Obviously things like FTX don't particularly help, but on one hand, it does help because it brings in regulation. People have to make mistakes, and we move forward. But we need brands to onboard, and we need IP to come into the metaverse, and we need to be able to help brands transition, protect, and kind of unleash that IP in new ways that they can't really do as it exists with Web 2 right now. So for this mass adoption to happen, it can't just be for the early adopters, for the crypto bros or the techies. And as with any new market, it's important for brands to really come in and experiment with this new medium and not just create Web 2 in Web 3 as it exists right now. So we really want to see real interaction, value, and utility, excitement, and innovation from the way that brands bring their IP into the metaverse. Just rinse and repeating what they're doing right now is not really going to create that engagement level that we need. So everything that you see in Web 2 right now will eventually make its way into Web 3. So whether it's your online grocery shopping, or whether it's your everyday banking needs, or your food delivery services. So for this adoption to kind of take place, we need kind of user-friendly terms, and we need less jargon, right? So loyalty, rewards, access, this type of terminology, instead of the Web 3 terminologies that we see all over the place at the moment, because it has kind of negative connotations. So I wanted to ask you guys, you've already told us a little bit about your organizations and what you do. If you could just touch a little bit on, how do you guys help companies bring their own IP into the metaverse? Jeff, we'll kick off with you.
Yeah, almost using the term IP, what is IP? And starting off with the original Web 2 side, you think about Mickey Mouse and from this mouse has spawned an empire of just Disney magic, amusement parks, movies, cartoons, merchandise. And so when we work with companies, we think about IP as content that can be consumed by your user. And that's the utility that we see right now. And so when we talk to our clients, and everything from automotive companies that are looking to bring their car to market, the IP would be the car itself. And so one of our clients is Renault, the automotive manufacturer. We help them. You know, a lot of people, when you purchase a car, you don't really have that engagement or that kind of fun experience of customization, driving it into a metaverse and whatnot. So what we did help them is, you know, first to go from Web 2 to Web 2.5, and the Web 2.5 for us is for using influencers to get the word out there. And then the Web 3 side is actually taking this car, putting it into virtual metaverses, getting customers to engage with it, play with it, you know, have a bit of pride and ownership in the IP, which is the car that they would eventually buy. So that would be one of the use cases that we're doing right now.
We have a slightly more narrow, if you will, approach to it, because we deal mostly with identity through avatars. So the way we, obviously we don't have your coverage, you're kind of covering a lot of verticals, whereas with us it's just more narrow, you know. But the way we think about it is, so we need to help those brands basically get control over their destiny in the virtual world that's coming up. And this is actually not my expression, this is something that someone from a major fashion brand under NDA told me during our first conversation. How do we get our destiny back in our hands? So in the world of Web 2, you have these small feudal states where like they control a lot of demand, but they also have walls. So there is nothing coming in and out without the, you know, the goodwill of the monarch, if you will. And that goodwill is not cheap. So you know where this goes.
So this whole notion of interoperability is,
so
is
what
critical.
what we bring to the table is the ability for a brand to basically leverage their own existing community, their own existing Web 2 infrastructure, like sell at your own storefront Web 3 content, and we'll give you the rails for that content to go to many different games and apps, which is a completely different economic model. So it's like the open economy of today versus the feudal state of some centuries ago. We kind of landed in a very weird place with Web 2 when you think about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I also think that the whole notion of simplifying the process is really important, because you know, if a company has to go and buy a parcel of land in an environment for $1 million, now that doesn't really enable you to experiment and innovate, because you know not many people have the budget to drop that kind of cash on you know that type of thing. So that's something that we've been looking at as well, by introducing what we're calling Metaverse as a service, which is a very pre-packaged, simplified way to onboard brands and manage, like hold their hand and give them that kind of white glove service, and simplify it to the extent that, you know, just like they would set up a Facebook page or an Instagram page or manage their Google Analytics, that type of thing. So I think we need to do all that stuff. Talking a little about real world examples. What are some of the best, kind of most innovative, but importantly value-driven examples that you've seen of brands bringing IP, or not just IP, but bringing that kind of emotion and customer journey into Web3 and the metaverse? Any of you can go.
I was literally just outside and I saw this video where they took a Bored Ape and they put it into a 3D environment, and this was a piece of video that's going to be content locked only to NFT token holders. So in terms of bringing IP and using your IP, any creator could just content lock video, you can content lock communities, and just defining what is the metaverse, you know, both in games, both from a virtual player standpoint. So the possibilities are limitless on what's being built in terms of what's being done now. I mean, the simplest ways are just go to Decentraland or go to the Sandbox, or pick up a Discord channel and start bringing in your IP and your content that people can only see if they have an NFT. One of the great examples too is Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. They created the Cool Cats video series that you can only get access to if you are an NFT holder. So,
seen anything around, Stan?
My example is slightly different because it originates from, let's call it an old school IP. So we did a project this summer with Tommy Hilfiger, a small brand, some of you might have heard of it, where they wanted to reinvent their approach to Web3, but in a way where they want to leverage their own community, because whatever we want to think about it, the Web3 community, especially as it is today, is not as big as we would like it to be. This is not mainstream. And by the way, if I hear the word normie again, I just turn my back to the person. But what they did was they built their own Web 2.5 website, in a sense, where they start with the virtual experience, dress up your avatar, which is interesting. People were engaged. It's something new. They go through it. And then they leverage their know-how of Web 2 and how to sell and how to promote, and then expand from there into physical outfits, into Metaverse use case, and so on and so forth. And that, for me, is a great example of how a traditional brand can on-ramp itself, and more importantly, its users, its fans, into what is shaping up to be Web3.
Yeah, that's a good segue into my next question, because we were talking earlier about that whole Web 2.5 and how brands can strategize about how to dip a toe and experiment into the metaverse, but do it in a way that matches their risk appetite and in a way that makes sense to their customer base and actually to their business internally, so that they can actually execute against it. It's all well and good having concepts of Web3 and crypto and being pushing the boat right out there, but if you don't have people inside that can understand how to deliver that value, both sides of the fence, to the brand and to the consumer, it's kind of useless. So I wanted to kind of ask you guys a little bit about the strategies that you guys see working. You mentioned the partnership with Tommy Hilfiger already, but I think partnerships are a good way for more traditional brands to partner with Web3 native brands, if you like, or crypto native brands, and kind of piggyback on that experience that they have.
That's certainly one way to go about it. We've seen a number of collaborations, especially in the fashion space, like our friends at DressX, The Fabricant. They gained a lot of notoriety around their collaborations with established brands. So that's definitely one way to go about it for a traditional brand. The other way would be to build something cool and unique themselves, or acquire and do it, like Nike. The other example would be Adidas. We actually worked with them as well, who are paving their own way, in a sense, in the space. But ultimately, when we think about Web3, it all goes down to ownership, right? That's what it is.
That's right.
Yeah, in terms of Web 2.5 and onboarding users, the moment you tell somebody, oh, you need to download a MetaMask and do this and do that, you already cut off a large portion of your user base and your population. And keep it as simple as possible in terms of onboarding these users. And there's some great platforms out there where it's invisible what technology is being used on the back end, because most people don't want to geek out on the technology and understand smart contracts, NFT, and whatnot. So we believe that to bridge that Web 2 to Web 3 needs to be as simple as possible. Most people understand a basic login. If you go to nft.coach.com, Coach Wallet did an integration where you just have to fill in your email address and password, which most people know about. Or even if you're at a restaurant, you swipe your credit card the same way you get rewards points. Now these can be NFTs and loyalty and whatnot. So just simplifying the process, and we've seen a lot of great products that are out there that are doing that. It'll help people, onboard IP and users. So, agreed.
And I want to add something to what Jeff just said. I kind of touched on it earlier, but I think one of the most important things we can do as an industry, as a community, is to drop the stupid jargon.
100%.
Like we just need to stop with that stuff. It's not funny anymore. It's not special anymore. Like, stop it. Make it easy. Make it simple. Give people good user experiences. Like, if we have to borrow an example of Web 2, no one cares if the Dcentral website was built with PHP or Ruby on Rails. It just works. Same thing with your Gmail. Same thing with your PayPal or whatever. If it's not easy, they're not coming.
Yeah, the whole simple. You don't know how your phone works, but it makes sense, right? So, I think when we talk about kind of mass adoption and like, my kids play Roblox all the time. They're 6 and 8, and I quite often make a joke that my 6-year-old has more daily active users in her server than Sandbox and Dcentral have. But I think once we get to the point of like, what's going to help us kind of cross that chasm to mass adoption, right? So for me, it's not necessarily virtual worlds or metaverses or these types of experiences, but it's the introduction of Web3 tech into daily life. And what I mean by that is, like an NFT is basically, obviously it's a non-fungible token, it's a smart contract, but that has so many applications in the real world, from buying a car to buying a house to going to a concert to buying an airline ticket. Are there any kind of use cases that you guys kind of see in the real world where you think that companies can leverage this technology, not from a philosophical perspective, but from a technical perspective, to help kind of bring their IP into the metaverse and Web3? Yeah?
In terms of easy to use, simple, I've yet to see the players that are, let's use Zoom, right? We mostly hop on these video calls on a daily basis, and the idea to limit that Zoom or content lock it to only certain NFT holders. There are some available platforms out there, but it is still pretty clunky to do that. Or to token gate the use of a video. If you were to watch a YouTube video and maybe a content creator wants to allow that content only to their user base. I know there's platforms that are available, but I have yet to see one that's kind of readily available and used right now, and I just hope this next build phase and the quietness of the bear market will allow the builders to be able to start building those products that are very used. So.
Yeah, so Jeff, you speak to a lot of different companies in your business, not just crypto native Web3 companies, but also traditional Web 2 companies. What kind of questions are they asking? What kind of vibes are you getting from those guys in the market when you're having these early conversations?
That's a great question, and just like Stan said, drop the jargon. And the moment I enter a room, and specifically with very traditional Fortune 100 brands, the moment you say NFTs, you're going to see eyes rolling. And if you want to explain it as marketing experience that engages your fans, increases loyalty. For the most part, right, in the world of marketing, you want to sell products. And what we've seen right now is one of the best use cases for Metaverse is to replicate the retail shopping environment. So we know of companies that are taking Best Buy electronic stores, and now you can actually see, hold, almost touch a laptop. And so that point of purchase, we do feel that it brings real use case to the Metaverse, because you're actually buying things. You can buy cars, you can buy homes. You think about Matterport, did a great job during COVID to be able to do open house just virtually, and that cut down a lot of travel time. Zoom cut down a lot of travel time. So what we see and we're focusing is like delivering true measurable ROI to our clients, backed by dollars. on these metaverse experiences.
That whole experience of like touch and feel the laptop sounds like something that should be developed in Unreal Engine 5 on a photorealistic metaverse. Sorry, Stan, I cut you off earlier. Jeff was replying to my question about mass adoption, and when I gave the example of concert tickets and airline tickets. Sorry, I think you had something to say there?
To me, it's on a very basic level. Anything that requires proof of is a great blockchain technology use case. Just that's it. Proof of presence, proof of ownership, proof of membership, proof of purchase.
Yeah.
Great. But not everything needs to be on the blockchain. Much like with the early internet.
That's true. We don't always need to use technology for technology's sake. Are there any areas besides kind of wearables that you guys are working with brands in Ready Player Me?
Again, we're a little bit, specialized because it's things which are on the avatar. But very recently we did, because the thinking is not exactly as a wearable in the physical world. But for example, L'Oreal entered the space with a set of, they're basically bringing IP and know-how through some of their brands. So Maybelline introduced some makeup looks for avatars, which is pure expression, and they look in a way that is not exactly everyday use in the physical world. Same thing with hairstyles through their L'Oreal Professional brand. They're probably the #1 experts of hair in the world. So they added stuff that is super difficult to achieve. You would have to spend like 2 hours, at the hairdressers to achieve that. And then in the metaverse, with an avatar, it's like click done.
Interesting. Yeah, we're actually in talks with a tattoo-based NFT project at the moment.
Those guys have been chasing me for a while. Technically, we need a little more.
Yeah.
To
So when I first heard about it, I was like trying to wrap my head around it. But once I went on the site and we had a conversation, I kind of just got it immediately. Like everything you can do with the real world, like why shouldn't you be able to get a tattoo for your avatar? And then once we even go beyond that and we start to get into AR, for example, and we extend outside of the metaverse, and you're wearing some AR glasses, you could have a tattoo on you right now that's kind of moving, and I can only see it when I've got my AR glasses. That's really cool.
Yeah, and it ticks all the boxes. It's art, it's culture, it's community.
Right.
It's all of those things. So it's screaming blockchain, basically, when you think about it.
Right. One thing that we've really noticed as a business is that Web3 tech and philosophy is a real game changer when it comes to like ownership, security, and data. I think brands and consumers, we're all consumers here. Everybody, we were talking earlier about when you go on the internet, the first thing most people do is make sure that they've got an ad blocker installed. It's kind of got to that point where you're just trying to protect yourself from being advertised against, which is kind of somewhat counterintuitive for everybody. Nobody's really having good experience. It's painful for everyone. So I think that brands and consumers are really crying out for a new way of targeting and engagement and reaching new communities, etc. To move away from this whole Facebook and Google ads model, where basically you're the product at the end of the day, and you're just being like absolutely attacked with anything possible. You don't want to sign up for anything. Obviously having crypto wallets and digital wallets and control over how you own that data and who you give that data to as a user kind of flips that whole model on its head and moves to a whole exchange of value model where the user has control, and in order to give up your data, a company needs to give you something of value, and then you kind of like go into this unofficial partnership because you kind of somewhat agreed on that. So my question is, how can kind of brands leverage this model, this new way of thinking into their strategy, as they look to kind of bring their own IP into the metaverse and their own strategies and their own customer journeys? Yeah?
Yeah, in terms of brands and IP, and of course, you think about someone that's a gamer and you visit a website, you probably want to see gaming-related ads. So what we've seen, and also some technology, is how brands can target hyper-specific wallets, and you see that in the form of airdrops and targeting. You know, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, they're into a certain amount of culture, but then you have the developers that are into a certain amount of, you know, just interests. And so for us, we think that, and we're also recommending a lot of these brands do it now so that you can start interacting with these wallets, because those wallets give you a lot of insight. It's your payment activity, it's where you are, proof of attendance. Also, you know, the other use case, you know, it's phenomenal in terms of, you know, where people go to school, that they even went to the school or worked at the company that they said through their wallet. And so just in terms of how brands can do it, it's relatively easy to set up, you know, proof of attendance, you know, NFTs, and I think for the most part, it's, we don't know what you don't know, just experiment with it, and at the end of the day, if you're genuine with your use case for whatever those NFTs are, we think that things usually work itself out.
Yeah, any thoughts on that, Stan?
The way we think about privacy is, again, through the lens of ownership. So this is Web3, right? Web3 is about ownership, ultimately. Like, brands are owning their destiny, in a sense, and users are owning also their assets, if you will, because this is the important bit. Like, you own stuff. You buy an outfit, in our case, for your avatar, and you own it, so you get to go places with it. But then again, like, ease of experience doesn't come for free. There are no solutions. There are trade-offs. Like, we kind of keep forgetting that. So my Google Maps works great for me because it knows where I am. You know, so that's useful information to exchange between me and Google.
Yeah.
Same thing, like, a lot of people love the convenience of Alexa. Alexa, order me whatever. Yeah, but like, Alexa is listening, you know? So in order for Alexa to hear you, you agree that she would be listening, and she may hear some stuff, you know, here and there. But we all agree to that. So I think what's shaping to come is, or my hope is, that brands realize that they need to communicate better, that in this new iteration and era of the internet, they bear more responsibility to communicate. What are they doing with the data? What kind of data are they collecting? And ultimately, users would have to have more ownership and agency.
That's right, yeah. I also think that, you know, the vast majority, say Metaverse or you say Web3, people think VR, they think goggles, they think Ready Player One, right? And certainly my experience when I speak to, like, my parents. But I think once you start to introduce this notion of Web 2.5, if you like, which kind of transitions this period of mixing the physical with the digital. I hate the term digital, but I guess it's all we have right now. But we were, in our virtual world, we were talking about having a food court where you could go in, just like you described the journey of buying a laptop. You could go into Whole Foods or McDonald's and pick from the menu. You could actually talk to somebody in your avatar and then have that delivered via Uber Eats, Deliveroo, or whatever it is, the localized section in your world. Or if you're buying a hoodie for your avatar in a virtual world or a marketplace, having the ability to have a discount code or that actual hoodie delivered to you in real life, but actually having, so we're kind of merging these two worlds together. I think that that's something that's going to really help bring this notion back from this whole science fiction standpoint to, like, actually, no, this is the evolution of the way that things are going. And even down to the point where if you're a worker working on a factory line in a car manufacturing plant, you know, the metaverse could go so far that you could actually sit in your living room and put on your AR on your VR goggles and operate that heavy machinery. So yeah, I just wondered if you guys had any thoughts around that whole mixing the physical and the digital aspect, and just any thoughts, examples, you know, where you see that going, or anything in the near term?
I think it's the way to go. Like, again, in our case, your avatar is your identity, an extension of your physical identity, if you will. So if there are like experiences that you can bring over, if you're spending a lot of time in a virtual world for one reason or another, you will want to bring over things that make you happy.
Yep.
One of the things I dislike about people bringing up all the time Ready Player One, not me, one, and Snow Crash, which is the other, you know, example people love to use. Those are dystopian stories. Those are not happy people.
That's right.
People
and we
keep
want to
forgetting
have
those are pieces of entertainment, someone's fantasy put on paper, and
100%.
then, you know, put out there, and we took it for granted for a very long period of time.
Okay. So I think we're at time. We've seen the clock tick down a bunch of times. Thanks for coming, everybody. Check out Crowd Create. Check out Ready Player Me. Check out Metaverse's World. Thank you. Have a good time.
Thank you.